James Cantrell, you're
Yes,
coming
sir.
through.
How you
That
doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. So we had a little bit of back and forth with the technology stuff here and there, but I'm glad we got it working. I'm glad that you're here because you had a long weekend.
Yeah, man, it was a long trip out there to Oklahoma and back for us from Kentucky.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to go ahead and get right into it because obviously you're coming off the big Nationals weekend. Can you tell me what you were going through? How you got set up to be in this huge points contention race, and then everything that transpired this weekend.
Well, man, with Corona this year, Ultra Four kind of cut back on the schedule and eliminated a lot of races with everything that's been going on. And in doing so, once they did that, they had just one East Coast race, one West Coast race, and then Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they changed the point structure this year, you could use two out of your three races, King of the Hammers, East Coast race, Moab, and then you also had to use nationals for your points. Um, the race down in Tennessee was the first regional race this year for Ultra Four, and we ended up getting really lucky and ended up taking a podium with third at that race, and that set us up really good because we had finish points from KOH this year, so that kind of set us up really decent in the national points race. Um, I had some unfortunate incidents with my truck and stuff. I had plans on going out to Moab actually myself to run the Razor in the race out there. Um, Made a couple phone calls, got a hold of Cole Clark without hesitation. He said, "Sure, no problem. I'll run under your name." He had some struggles earlier this year and had some unfortunate DNFs and was out of the points race, so he had no problem running for me under my name. And with the way Ultra 4 rules are wrote, you can run and have one substitute driver at an event throughout the whole season to run for you to keep you in points in case you can't make it to an event.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Cole goes out there and puts it on pole and takes the win. Um, I was expecting that. That's what I was kind of hoping would happen. Cole's a phenomenal driver, and he's super super fast. So that kind of set me up really good. Jamie McCoy ended up winning Tennessee and ended up taking third in Moab. So that put us both exactly tied. I think we had like 1,972 points going into nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with that being said, you still have to finish nationals to get points for the season. You can't substitute your national points with another race throughout the season. So I was really nervous, you know what I mean, going out there knowing we're tied for first in points. We still have to finish this race
Mm-hmm.
to even be in contention for the national championship. And then we got to beat Jamie McCoy to win the championship. And that in itself is a whole nother struggle.
Yeah.
Um, we had a good plan. I felt good. I actually had my car prepped early. We left, got out there. Everything was going great. Car felt a little weird when I went out to go qualify. I was really slow, like about 24 seconds off the leaders, and that's not normal with me driving. I normally qualify a little closer to the front.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really think anything of it, and we qualified 16th, I think, for race day. I wasn't that worried about it. I knew the course in Oklahoma was going to be brutal. We were around 30-mile laps, so just Loop A was fast, but you had your danger sections with little rock areas that they had put in there because you'll be rolling, and all of a sudden here's a little boulder field, and in a
Mm-hmm.
razor, those little boulder fields will end your day quick. Loop B was more real hard rock, not super challenging, but you never really got to take a break.
Mm-hmm.
You were in rock constantly. I mean, just bebopping up and down these trails. They had some super cool creek crossings and everything on Loop B. We left the race that morning. Still dark out. We kind of took it conservative through Loop A. I think we worked our way up to 12th after Loop A, and then we come back through after our first Loop B, and I think we were sitting in sixth. I didn't know at this point in time, but we actually had 46 seconds on McCoy at this point in the race. We were kind of sticking to our game plan. Everything was going great. Went out and did our second Loop A. We were getting ready to go back in Loop B, which I know Loop B is where we're really going to make up our time. Out in the open, those guys, those Can-Ams are hard to catch out in those
Mm-hmm.
fast fields, but you put us on the rocks and it's a different ball game. We come into the short course. go through the start finish line, get ready to go, head out on loop B, and the car just shuts off. Completely loses power to the dash. Everything else is still on. All our pumpers, radios, everything else was still functioning on the car at that point. I'm like, what's going on, man? Me and my co-driver, Casey Ryan, hop out. We tear the hood off the car, start going through all the electrical, battery, connectors, tear the dash off the car, and I just can't figure it out. I'm like, we're half a lap from getting the finish points, which I knew if we finished the race, we would still end up on the podium for the series, for the season. And I knew the championship was out at this point. I mean, with being down 20 plus minutes, there was no way we were going to catch McCoy. I got lucky, and right before I gave up and started walking back to the pits, I decided to check the fuse block and found a blown ignition fuse in the main harness for the Razor. Luckily, I'd never had the cover off, so there was all the spare fuses in the holders. We changed the fuse, put the panels back on the car, and took off and completed our loop B again. At this point, we were just going for a finish. We came back through, and it did it again. Same place on the short course, cross start finish line, hit the little jump, land, car shuts off. We knew what it was at this point, so we just swapped the fuse again. I left my co-driver Casey there. He was supposed to ride with Casey Gilbert too in the 4800 class race, and I knew our race was over. Essentially, at this point, we were just going for a finish. So I left him in the pits and took off and did my third loop A, and they ended up timing me out at the finish line in 8th place.
Man.
Brutal.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's super disappointing. I'm glad we finished. But at the same time, I'd have really liked to make McCoy earn that championship.
I mean, so look, let's go through it. Let's start at the beginning here. With the prep. So you prepped early, and I mean, to me, one of your like striking like signature moves is the late prep.
Yeah, I was trying to be prepared. I knew how much was riding on this race. I knew McCoy. He's one of the best drivers on the East Coast, hands down. I knew if we wanted a shot at beating him straight up, we were going to have to show out there and be on our A game. And I thought we were.
Yeah.
Everything was working great. We took the car out after qualifying Friday night, did a shakedown run, did about 10 miles on the car just to make sure everything was great. Car felt perfect. I mean, it's just one of those fluke things in racing that you can't really blame yourself for. It just kind of happens.
Yeah, and we'll get to it in a second. But, you know, if you were to run with this car in the future, you know, how do you chase down an ignition fuse getting blown? I mean, that's a symptom, it sounds like, of something else. What is
something has to be shortened somewhere, touching randomly. The only thing you can really do is tear into the car and start looking for frayed wire, something touching, some ground wire loose here, something loose there. That's really the only way to find it. Grab a voltmeter and start diagnosing, shaking stuff, see if you can have it duplicate that problem again.
Dude, that's, first off, that sucks. That sucks that it happened, but that sucks that, like, that's the next step, you know? And like we mentioned before, or I mentioned before we got on the call, I actually was supposed to go ride on Saturday and ended up, you know, kind of realizing how important this race was between you two, you and Jamie. And I ended up pushing my ride to Sunday. And man, I got to tell you, like, it was one of those days where there was, as a spectator, you know, I was watching on Friday, watched you guys qualify. I did think it was weird where you qualified. I was like, I thought you'd be a little bit more towards the front. And then back in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, he's playing, you know, the slow and steady game of like, let's just get there, get the points, and you'll make up some ground, because the attrition on the car, you know, just seeing the race that the qualifying lap they had, you know, is going to be rough. Like, it was going to take people out, especially when they started talking about on the Loop A, you know, from the drone footage that we got to see, Loop A looked like a dirt road. But, you know, hindsight, we get these videos from, you know, the racer cam, and there's these little tire killers and suspension killers out there that are just off the trail. And, you know, it was one of those where I thought to myself that there would be a lot less people finish than did. So I was surprised by the total number of people that actually ended up being able to, you know, drive their machine out and all that kind of fun stuff. But uh, how did you feel about starting at 7 o'clock in the morning? I mean, I was up at I think 6:50, and you guys took off the line somewhere 7:25 Central, and it was dark. It was dark
Oh,
outside. What were
it
your
was
thoughts
real
on that?
dark. I actually didn't have any lights in my car. I didn't go prepared for starting at 7 a.m. in the dark. Luckily, I
So
actually
did
had
they?
my
Was that
12-inch
part of
light
the
in the
plan?
car. Yeah, it was originally for them starting at 7 a.m., but I didn't really put two and two together that we'd be starting at pitch black at 7 a.m. I really wasn't,
Agreed.
didn't, just a lack of uh, thought on my part. I really liked. I enjoy starting racing in the dark. It really doesn't affect me that much the way I drive. It's kind of a cool different aspect too. You know what I mean? You're starting in the morning early and driving into the sunlight. It's really fun. The sun though is brutal that early in the morning when you're coming up and down those cliffs. The reflection coming through your visor gets really bad on a couple of spots up there once the sun actually does come up until it
Mhm.
gets fully rise. But
Now
I
you
love Oklahoma.
so I wasn't familiar necessarily with the Oklahoma course, and a little bit of a sidetrack here. Are they not going to keep Reno as the national ending?
We will be back at Reno next year for the national championship, which I love Reno. Reno is an awesome race course, but
Yeah.
I really feel Oklahoma is more of a true national championship course for Ultra Four Series as far as being. We ran almost 100 miles this year versus being a short course race. I think the Oklahoma course really is the definition of Ultra Four racing. I mean, there's everything you can possibly dream of out there for obstacles from mud to high speeds.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that it was really, especially the 4900 class, like the highlight video came out today, which you made a nice appearance in. It's a good looking car come running through that water. But one thing I was going to ask you was in that course, you mentioned that there are water crossings. In Oklahoma this last weekend, there was like this crazy ice storm, and I know it had to be cold for you guys getting started that early. How, the water crossings were on the Loop B, which was lap 2 for you guys. Was the sun up by the time that you were hitting the water?
Yeah, the sun was up by the time we got to Loop B. We ended up starting us a little bit late. I think I left the line around 7:38 or something like that.
Mhm.
So by the time we made it into the woods, it was 8 o'clock and the sun was already starting to rise by the time we hit the water. It was still frigid. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I slowed up a little bit for the water crossing just to make sure I didn't soak myself that morning. I hate being cold.
Oh, I
It was
get it,
frigid.
man.
I mean, it was brutally cold. I'm not a fan of the cold at all. I mean, I was sitting on the starting line. My co-driver Casey's like, "Are you shaking?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "This is not nerves. That's just how cold I am right now."
Yeah. So, what was your co-driver's last name?
Casey Ryan, me and
Okay.
Casey have raced together since I started doing this. We built the Cherokee together, raced the CJ together, did the 4400 rock bouncing.
Yeah.
We've done it all together.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's funny when anyone says Casey and I'm in the Ultra 4 mindset, I immediately think Casey Gilbert, and I'm like, that would be an interesting pairing to get both of y'all in a car together. I would
Yeah, Casey. Oh, with me and Gilbert actually raced together. The first pro rock race down at Busted Knuckle, the first ever
oh,
survival race. Gilbert showed up late and didn't get to pre-run the race course, so he just hopped in with the Razor and was like, "Man, I'm gonna ride with you." And it was a ball. We had a blast. He doesn't cut me
there's
any
two,
slack, and it's
yeah,
fun.
there's two
Neither
guys
does
that
Casey
drive the
Ryan.
car so hard.
Yeah, and Casey Ryan spent a lot of time. He's rode with Casey Gilbert. He's rode with Shannon Campbell in Casey's car. He's got to ride with a lot of really fast people. He's a great co-driver. He knows the pace it takes to win, and nowadays it's a really fast, high pace the whole entire time.
Yeah, that was something that I was very aware of, especially when I started seeing the numbers come through after lap 1. Is there was a lot of guys that were fast, but there was 5, 6, 7 of y'all where y'all were really like, as Miles says, y'all were hauling the mail. Y'all were going wild the entire time, and it's to me, it's a really big testament to not only like the prep that you guys do on the cars, but the parts that you guys are using. I mean, the race courses are just as hard as they used to be. They're the same killer courses, but I feel like, again, I was surprised how many cars finished. the endurance, the strength of these cars is really, really impressive nowadays. I thought that was really cool to see,
Yeah, it's insane. Everybody's really stepped up their games. It doesn't matter whether you're in a Polaris, Yamaha, Can-Am. I mean, it doesn't matter. Everybody's really stepped up their game as far as even OEMs to aftermarket parts.
Mhm.
It's crazy. We ran, I want to say this race was about 3 hours, and
That's
you
a
were
long time.
pushing the car the entire time. It's everybody now is just fully committed. The sport has changed so much in the past couple of years where if you finished a couple of years ago, you had a good shot at a podium.
Mhm.
And now, if you're not out there running 110% and have a perfectly clean race, your podium chances are gone.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, a shot at winning. Any little mechanical problem, issue you have, you're pretty much taking yourself out.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my last question for really that race, because again, I know it ended in a way that you didn't exactly hope for, was in the Loop B. There was an optional, like, I think it was called like Hell's Staircase or something like that. I'm probably butchered that name. But that was an optional line. I saw that
Yep.
some of the 4,400 cars took it. Did any UTVs take it?
Cole Clark took it on his last lap.
Woo,
He
son,
took it in his Polaris Turbo S.
man.
They had told me he went out Friday night and pre-ran it and made it in his Razor and said he was going to do it during the race. And I guess he ended up doing it on his last lap, and that's how he got by McCoy for second place. Was taking that line on the last lap of the race.
So how ballsy was that? Because it's hard to put things in video into perspective, but that obstacle
It's
gained
a
you.
sketchy climb, and it's a big risk, especially in a 3 hour race.
Mhm.
Razors have come a long way, and so has the Can-Ams. But when you put that type of punishment on it, it's a big risk to take it. Um, it was definitely one of those obstacles. It was doable, but it was an extremely high risk obstacle where you get there up on the obstacle, you make one mistake, you've lost every advantage you had to taking that line versus just staying on the race course and taking the easy way around.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty much all I had really to say about Oklahoma. Again, I know it didn't end exactly the way you wanted it to, but something very interesting has happened since you returned. You are now, or let me rephrase and say the Mad Ram 11 Ultra 4 machine that you own, it's up for grabs. What's caused you to want to jump, not jump ship necessarily, but where are you going? What are your thoughts, and why are you doing it? Let's start there.
I've had a good run with this machine. This is this third full year. I've raced it, and I wanted to move up before this season. It just didn't work out. We ended up just staying with the same machine and racing it through the rest of this year.
Mhm.
Um, After Oklahoma, I'm over it. It's me and that machine have a love hate relationship. I love the car.
Mhm.
When it works right, it's super fast. It works great in the rocks. It's a tank. It just hates me. It always comes down to something little with it, and I just want to get rid of that bad juju and move onward and upward. And more than likely, you'll see me in a Pro XP next year.
Now it'll be. I'm assuming you have posted some pictures and videos on your Instagram about you having access to a Pro XP4. It's not going to be a 4-seat, is it?
No, we ended up giving the 4 seat back to Polaris. That was just a demo we got to keep for a couple months. Had to turn it back in. It'll be a 2 seat standard Pro XP that I'll strip down and turn into a race car.
Now I know that Mad Ram 11 kind of has, I don't know if it's like a known thing or what, but they have a little bit of a partnership with Polaris Razor. Why not take this time and go to a Can-Am, because that seems to be the winning machine? There's air quotes there.
I'm still a believer in the Polaris Razor. If you look out west, the guys in the Work Series have having a lot of success with the Pro XPs. The Andersons, they've had good success with them in the Work Series. There's a few guys racing them. I really haven't seen anybody on the East Coast really build a Pro XP yet to really come compete with the Can-Ams to really show them what they've got. I've driven both machines. Um, the Can-Ams are fast. I'm no way around me denying it. I've driven Nathan Wolf's Can-Am that he got from Cheney that he raced at KOH last year at AOP. It's a fast ride. I mean, they got that thing dialed in to perfection.
Mhm.
On the other hand, I've just always been a fan of Polaris. The Pro XP, I was really impressed with that four seater. I haven't got to get my hands on a two seater yet to really test one out, but I think the extra wheelbase and the power, I think I can build a competitive machine to give those guys a run for their money.
Yeah, I would say that you can, and I know that there's guys that raced them last year at King of Hammers, and I had Brett from Polaris, the race team guy, on the show, and I asked him, I was like, why didn't we see more Pro XPs this year? We saw, I think, a handful, 3 or 4, and a lot of Turbo S's out there, and he basically explained to me that their race system, they get to choose what it is, and I agree with you. I think that Michael Lee has built a Pro XP on the East Coast, but other than that, I mean, no one on the East Coast that I'm aware of, and if I'm forgetting somebody, I'm sorry, but no one's built a bad to the bone, built to the hilt Pro XB out there outside of Michael Lee, and unfortunately, he had a real rough role at King of Hammers.
Yeah, he yard sailed that car at the Hammers. He was having a good run too.
Yeah.
He spent the time out there getting that car dialed in. He was looking really fast till he had that unfortunate wreck on lap one.
Mm-hmm.
I know Truett's built one for short course. I know he'll have it out next year. Other than that, I really don't know of anybody out here that's really built the Pro XP. I think it's a phenomenal platform. Judging coming from driving the four seater version of it, the handling characteristics and everything, I can really tell a big difference from it over my turbo car. And my car's a tank. I built it with KOH. I mean, that was the whole intent of building this car was for KOH and AOP. It's overkill everywhere. I mean, it's built to really take a beating and keep rocking. And I think the new one, I'm going to focus a little more on keeping it a lot lighter than I built this car. I think that's one of the things I'll take that I've learned from watching McCoy and a couple other guys this year.
Mm-hmm.
Weight really hurts you in a side by side.
Where are you gonna gain that weight loss?
I'm probably gonna go full chromoly on the new car.
Mm-hmm.
Do a little thinner wall tubing here and there. Like for example, my seat mounts, they're solid 18 inch by 18 inch quarter-inch plates. That's what my seat sits on. It's way overkill for what you would ever need. All my every bar on my car that I added is all 120 wall, 1.75 inch. The stuff that's 1.5 inch, the door bars, that's all 120 wall too.
Mm-hmm.
Every piece added to the car was 120 wall. I don't think there's any 095 or anything in the car besides 120. I think there's a few things I can shed off the car and kind of do it a little more compact and try to really shed as much weight as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this. And so I've driven an RS1 and a Pro XP. I've never been in a Turbo S, but I'd like to. The Pro XP, I think you nailed it. The handling characteristics are just bananas compared to the XP platform.
Yep.
If they could get the similar feel, because the RS1 doesn't feel like that, it feels like its own beast. If they could stretch the RS1 to a Pro XP length and gave it, similar or the same handling characteristics, do you think that you would race, an Ultra 4 season or a KOH in an RS1 if it had those components?
I think you could be competitive. I don't see there's any reason why you couldn't. I just like having a co-driver. I find it really beneficial to have a co-driver in the car to keep me pushing and keep me on top of on my job. When I'm in the car myself, I find myself getting lost. I'll lift here and there, not really push the whole time like I do when I have somebody sit in the passenger seat yelling at me, telling me to go faster.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, in the current car that you have versus what you're going to build? Okay, so you want to shed some weight, but is there anything that you have that you're like, this has to go with me to the next car, be it some performance upgrade or some, whatever it may be? Is anything like a must-have on the next car?
I'll definitely put the same winch on it. That
There you
90 RC thing's awesome. I'll put all the dyno jet tuning on it. Love the dyno jet tuning, clutching. The hottest my clutch got when I was out in Oklahoma was 168 degrees.
That's insane. That's
My car runs all the Pro XP clutching transmission with dyno jet's clutch kit in it.
Mm-hmm.
And since I've swapped over this thing, belt temps have gone. I mean, they're a thing of the past. The new clutching Polaris really killed it. I'm really, really impressed with how that stuff's been working. Other than the dyno jet tuning, RCV axles, of course, I'll put on the new car. Pretty much all of my same sponsors and stuff I run on this car, I'll put on the new car. this car, I really got it figured out now as far as what works. It's really turned into a tank. Other
Mhm.
than the couple fluke things we've had happen this year, I feel really confident in all the people that I have helping me with the car and everything that we run. That I really don't see anything that I would change as far as parts that I would put on the new car. Block rev and shocks, of course, will go on the new one. Shock
Mhm.
therapy racks, a necessity. Like I said, RCB axles, drive shaft, uh, just the basics.
Gotcha. So this time, wow, it's crazy. Earlier this year, we were having an interview and you were on your way to King of Hammers. You had just done a lot of renovation on the car that you're now going to sell. I think you moved around the spare tire location. The cage looked a little different. Is there anything like that that you're looking at in the Pro XP where you think visibility may be an issue? Because in my opinion, if you have a spare in the Pro XP, like you have no rear sight, which again isn't the worst thing in a race scenario, but it's something to be mindful of.
Yeah, I think one thing I really want to do on the new car is put a rear facing camera in.
Hmm.
That way, rear vision won't be as much of an issue anymore. With my car set up now, I've got the radiator up high, I got the spare
Hmm.
tire up high. You really can't see anything out of the back of the car. I think a rear facing camera is pretty crucial to a good race car, especially for King of the Hammers, where you can see yourself when you're backing up on the rocks and kind of make maneuvers if you need to get around, know exactly where you're at on the ledges. Um, Other than that, I'll probably try to get the spare tire as low as possible. Try to move the center of gravity down a lot on the new car compared to this car. This car is a really big cage. I've got the fuel cell mounted up high. I sit up really high in it for vision. On the new car, I think I'm going to take a lesson out of the Can-Am guys and try to lower the hood and get the body line sitting a little lower on the car so I can get the center of gravity down a little bit more than what I have on my car.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't. So now that entails, chassis modifications from, the mid bar up,
Yep.
essentially. Okay, cool. I like that. I personally, I haven't kept up with like the works guys that are running the machine or not, but I haven't seen anyone on the East Coast make a chassis modification like that. And I think that that's the missing piece for the Pro XP to go, from the consumer version to race car version. I think that it does need to be smushed just a little. I think
Yep.
that the rear vision issue, and then I think you'll have something really special. I'm excited to see
Yeah,
it.
I think if you take a Pro XP and actually build it as a true race car, really strip it down and go through it and make it uh, move it from a trail riding car to a true race car, I think you'll have a really, really, really fast race machine.
Yeah, I think so too. So let me ask you, obviously, there's an option for people to have a chance to win your car. Where can they find that information? How do they get in touch with
You
you?
can go to my Facebook page, James Cantrell. Message me on there. You can go to my racer page, message me. I've got it listed on there. I think we've got like 40 spots left on the car, and then we'll be giving it away to somebody.
Yeah, that's cool. And as someone who I ironically and just by luck has won one before, it's a legit thing. It's really cool and it's awesome.
Yeah,
Again,
it's awesome. I'm really excited to see who ends up with it and what they end up doing with it next season.
it's
Um,
always I'm sure it's an interesting feeling when that car will evidently show up at a race against you.
yeah, I hate to have to race against it. When it's on point, it's fast. I mean,
It's also like seeing your ex-girlfriend again. It's kind of one of those weird, like, it's kind of
oh,
funny.
it's
And
going to
then,
be sad.
yeah.
I've got a lot of memories in this car, and when it leaves, I'm going to be a little bit sad. I'm not going to lie. This car and me have had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of anger. We've gotten a lot of fights, but I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right in the sweet spot. Okay. So, in the off season, that the car moves and I am fully confident that car will go soon. Um, what does this off season look like for you? Is 2021 KOH, is that the next stop for you?
As of right now, 2020 KOH is on. We had a driver summit out there in Oklahoma, and Dave has plans of moving forward and making KOH happen for 2021. We'll do the full Ultra 4 series again next year. I'm really excited we get to go to Crandon. I've always
Yeah.
wanted to race at Crandon. Now that's part of the East Coast series. That's going to be awesome. There's
Yeah, that is. So this was the first year that I had actually watched Crandon, and I had made a point to have a couple of the Crandon guys on, and just haven't got around to it. I like so much that Ultra Four is going to like a pure short course. Like that's a man's
yeah,
short course, and there's a lot of history behind it. There's a lot of legacy behind it, but I mean that's a totally different game than anything else that Ultra Four races. I loved watching it. in my opinion, it was over too quick. Like I watched the 4,400 guys race that night, and then the 4,900, and it was just like 10 minutes and it was over. It felt like.
Yeah, I'm hoping they're going to they'll run us on the long course where we go through the rocks and go up
Yep.
through the woods and everything like they have with the 4,400s, and not stick us just strictly on the short course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Ultra 4 hit the nail on the head next year perfectly with the schedule, because we're doing Crandon, then we go to AOP, or actually we go to Rush for anniversary bash. I think April 24th for next year, which that's more of a GNCC style woods course
Mm-hmm.
than really go fast. I love Rush, and then after that we go to AOP, and AOP is a real rock, nasty,
Yeah.
rough race course. I think they killed it as far as putting the trifecta in for different car setups, different driver setups next year. I think it's really going to be interesting to see what happens.
Are they going to race at Moab again? I know that was a random race.
Moab is a West Coast race next year. They
Okay.
are going back to Moab.
Okay. So you planned on doing the full East Coast or East and West?
I'll do the full East Coast series. I'm not sure I'll make it to Moab. I may go out there depending on what happens with work and what other series pop up, what other races we end up getting committed to next year.
Yeah.
Haven't heard anything from Pro Rock on what's going to happen with their schedule for next year, where we'll be racing at yet. I'll try to do as many of those as I can, of course. I really want to try to get down to Texplex and run with those guys.
Dude,
the
they
Miller
got
brothers are
going on down
dude.
there.
They got it. Texplex is killing it right now, and so is Mid America.
Yeah,
they're putting on their own series next year too. It's going to be a big year for side by side racing next year. I'm really excited. There's going to be a lot of money paid out. These parks are really stepping it up with what Texplex is doing with their own series, and with Mid America doing their own series. They're paying out some big money. I want to say they're paying out $250,000 next year at Mid America for their side by side series.
That's
I
crazy.
think it's 25,000 to the series winner.
Yeah.
That's huge. It's awesome to see the growth, even with the pandemic and everything we've dealt with this year, with everything being shut down, that we get to look forward to next year and see a lot of big paydays available to the side-by-side community, which is awesome.
Now, I had Bree Molitor on last week, and she talked about the Visions event that's going to be happening in June or July, something. So that is a Southern Rock, Pro Rock, Ultra 4 combination of everything. They're running 4,400 Ultra 4. I'm assuming that's going to be a side-by-side race as well. But I was curious if Pro Rock is going to try and run some kind of endurance race there while they're all in the mix.
I think Mid America's probably will run their own series for that race. I know they're having their own series next year, and that would be what I would guess is Mid America will just have it as their own side-by-side, another race for their side-by-side series next year. Then Ultra 4, of course, will bring in the 4,400 cars and run. I know Pro Rock was going to do the knockout racing stuff, which is knockout. I mean, that was my favorite racing I did when I had the big car was knockout.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about that too. Are there any plans for you in the foreseeable future to get back in a big car?
I wish I could say yes. It's always on my plan. Eventually, I would love to build another 4,400. It's just the cost and funding to run competitively in 4,400 class. I don't have it.
Dude, not many people do.
It's crazy how far the sport has come. I got a lot of respect for the guys like the Blylers and everything, and the way they run their programs. There's no expense spared. They come with their crew. They come with everything on point, and they've got the best of everything you can put in their cars. And that's pretty much every team across the 4,400 board nowadays. The level of commitment that they do it's unbelievable, and the cost of the cars has gotten astronomical. You're $250,000 if you want a car, and that's no spares, that's no trailer, that's no truck, that's just a car, and you're going to break it every time you take it out.
That's a fact, and it's dude. Well, you have to look at it, and I look at nationals, and one of I don't know exactly, the 4,400 car that I saw was Blyler, and it just ate the stair, the Hell's Stairway or whatever it was called. I mean, just ate it up. And watching Eric Miller, I think that he has his own highlight reel from the Oklahoma race. He came around a corner and it's like a jump into a corner, and I think it was into maybe the finish line because he slowed down dramatically afterwards. Uh, it didn't look right. It looked like it was sped up. And I watched it again, but they've got those cars so dialed, being a solid axle car, being able to maneuver the way it does. I was like extremely blown away just at what that car is capable of doing, because on the East Coast here, at finals, we had solid axle cars going through like, I don't know, probably 200 feet of whoops and having issues, big
Yep.
issues. Like, and it was just one of those where I was like, not only does this show you that these are two different things and that they're two different, levels to this, but holy cow, that Miller chassis that he's running, that Miller setup, holy smokes, dude, just so much further than anybody else right now.
It's really impressive with what Eric Miller's done with that program and the Miller Pro chassis. He built it himself, designed it himself, had a lot of help from the Blylers as far as putting it into production and manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
They've got it down to a science. I mean, they've got part numbers for every part on that car. They can pull up and give you a part number for every little piece, every bar, every bracket, every tab. They spent a lot of time testing, tuning, modifying, improving, and perfecting everything they do to make that car work. I think he's been running that chassis, I want to say 5 or 6 years now since he
Mm-hmm.
built his first car. I know he started out with the Twisted Customs OG car, and
Yep.
raced it for I think 2 seasons before he ended up building his new chassis. And those guys kill it. I will say I have ridden a bomber car. They're fast too. Rainey's got that platform completely figured out to take whatever you want to throw at it. Um, I, I still say a solid axle car can be competitive with an IFS depending on the race course. On a true short course, IFS is going to be faster, hands
Mm-hmm.
down. They just handle better on the true short course. But when you get into anything Ultra 4 style, other than a short course, I think a solid axle can still be competitive on any given day.
Yeah. So outside of a couple of, people here and there, the podcast is booked until the second week of January right now. And on the first week of January, we're having Cody Wagner on from Laser Nut. And I'm going to talk to him, why that car is not running every race other than King of Hammers. I mean, like it shows up for King of Hammers, has its issues or does well, whatever, whichever one it ends up being. But I want to see that car out at Oklahoma. I want to see that car come through, AOP and see. I don't know the width measurement on it, but like those are like that technology that I mean, let's be honest. An Armada Engineering chassis, what, $400,000,
Yeah, I want to say you're right about 400 grand for that car that him and Pellegrino have with
dude?
the IRS, IFS.
Dude,
It's awesome. It
it,
works.
it does. And
I mean,
Pellegrino is my 4,400 pick for this year too. I picked him last year and it didn't work out, but I'll pick him again because I really believe in the technology. But man, those are the cars that I want to see do the national like circuit, because
yep.
you see him at King of Hammers. They obviously do well, but King of Hammers has this all-inclusive kind of thing. But at the same token, it really doesn't. There's so much more out there. I would have loved to have seen that car, or the Laser Nut car, or Jordan's car out there at Oklahoma. Man, I really think it could have hurt some feelings.
Yeah, I'd like to see a bunch of those cars show up and come play with us on the East Coast like they used to back in the day. I can remember going up
Yeah,
to the Badlands and you had everybody.
dude.
A lot of the guys ran the whole series 4 or 5 years ago than just running the regional races. But also the cost to do a race now for 4,400 class, if you want to be competitive, you're around 20 grand a race. So
Woo!
it really adds up quick. As far as you got to pick and choose what races you want to show up at, depending on your budget.
Yeah, that's true. So pulling it back to the UTV side of things, what do you think of Speed UTV?
Awesome. I
Have you seen it in
Robbie,
person yet?
I haven't got to see it in person. I followed along,
Yeah.
watched a lot of the stuff Robbie's does. I love his design. He's killed it. I can't. There's nothing about that car that I can complain or say I don't like that isn't engineered right.
Mhm.
Robbie Gordon's super smart. What he's been able to do with that car, and I think it's going to be competitive right out of the gate. I think it's going to be hard to beat. Uh, I think it'll run up there with the Polaris and Can-Am, no problem. I
Mhm.
think it's just going to be another one that you're going to have to worry about showing up to and dealing with at races. He's got a lot of cool technology in that car with the front steering rack and its fully integrated billet bulkhead, 300 horsepower from the factory. It's a fully welded uh, race car right out of the gate.
And it's ballpark, I think starting is 40 grand, which in all
I
reality,
heard 34 for the two-seat version.
well, let me just say this, 34, 40, whatever. If you know that, if I'm so we'll use Cody Wagner as the example here, owner of Laser Nut, who wants to build a King of Hammers car and be an industry leader. If I'm someone that just wants to like build something cool and not have to worry about it, 35 grand is the same thing that people are paying for a Turbo S 4C right
Yep.
now. That's bananas. That would be, I mean, for someone who likes to internet race over here, I would buy one of those and I would show up to one race a year, and just let it all be done, all said and done, right then and there. That'd be awesome. I think that if that car comes to fruition and it works out, the initial bugs that it'll always have just because it's a new car, I personally don't see anybody else being able to hang out with that. That's bananas. The numbers and the videos that I've seen of it going around curves and things like that, it's just insane.
Yeah, it's super fast right out of the gate. I mean, he's claiming 300 horse right out of the gate. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of power to put through a side by side. I'll be interested to see. I know it's going to be a good desert car, but I'll be
Mhm.
curious at how well it does here on the East Coast. Just like you don't see a lot of guys really liking the Turbo S's on the East Coast because the
Mhm.
extra width, the 72 inches out here when you're dodging trees, really makes a big difference. That's why you see a lot of even the Can-Am guys, Wolf McCoy, Shaw,
Yep.
all those guys still running 64s.
Mhm.
It's a total different setup from running what you would out west to what you run out here.
So having rock bouncing in your background, do you think that the bouncer guys will look at the Speed UTV and, I don't think they're going to run it, like a full body version of a Speed UTV, but, we're seeing 1,000 horsepower, 1,500 horsepower in the big bouncers. Why wouldn't people be, kind of siphoning the drivetrain out of this new Speed UTV and turn it into a rock bouncer?
I think it can be competitive. I think you will end up seeing somebody try it. I'm sure if you can get the parts to hold up behind it,
Hmm.
it'd be super competitive. I think you can go out there and win with it, just like you could with the Polaris, just like you could with the Can-Am. Paul Wolf's Can-Am he raced this year, that thing was no slouch. It,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of horsepower. I heard a rumor there's going to be a couple guys running full bodies next year that were in tube chassis this year. So we'll be really interested to see what happens with the series next year.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a note real quick here because we're gonna talk about rock bouncing drivers for next year, and we're gonna talk about their rigs because I've heard some rumors and I've heard some cool stuff, and I want to run them by you. But before I forget, I had this interview with Polaris. We've all seen it on the social media. There is this rumored Pro XB-R vehicle coming in 2021 spring. Um, you know, in my discussions with Polaris, and I'm not revealing anything that people already don't know. Um, I talked to Brett, and he was basically just like, we're going to be looking at King of Hammers. That's our next stop essentially. It's Dakar and then King of Hammers. And would you consider waiting to buy one if it were to release in spring 2021?
I think it's too late as far as getting a car ready for the Hammers, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I've done that for 2 years straight, and last minute, middle of January, still working on the car, trying to get everything lined out and show up
Mhm.
and have tons of issues during the race that I'm going to try this year to have everything ready by end of the year, 1st of January, where I can actually relax and show up with a real game plan and try to make a run and a good finish this year.
Yeah.
I think the Pro R is going to kill it if it comes to fruition. And what I've seen, what I've heard the same thing everybody else has.
Yeah.
Nobody else is getting really any good information out of anybody that you don't already know that hadn't been released, other than what I mean, the pictures everybody's seen of the car that
Yeah.
supposedly doesn't exist.
Yeah, I would say that everyone knows it exists. It has signed an NDA, and it's just like, well, that's no fun.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an awesome car.
Yeah.
The width, the horsepower, the whole 9 yards, the no belt. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be in its own class.
Yeah.
I think they're going to end up having to make a move and open up true unlimited class for side by sides. I see that where that car is going to have to end up in. I don't see it being allowed to compete with the under 1,000 cc rule like the new cars, all the stuff
Mhm.
is right now.
Yeah.
I think that car could be really competitive at the Hammers. I don't know if it can be competitive against a true 4400 car. I know a lot of guys still try to say that a side by side could go out there and win the 4400 class, and I think they're crazy. Um, I think you could this year. Miller Brothers went out there, ended up finishing 15th, I think, in the
Yeah.
4400 class. Um, but those main top 20 guys in 4400, the speed that those cars are capable of and the stuff they can do, no side by side will ever compete at that level. I think the Pro has a chance at closing that gap in performance between a side by side and a true 4400 car. Um, I'll have to drive one and kind of see exactly what it shakes out like once they do come out and you can actually get their hands on one. Um, but as far as a side by side winning 4400, I don't think you'll ever see it happen. The big cars are just too fast.
They're super fast, and one of the main differences is the trails that they run. They're either run different directions in the 4400 class, or they run different trails entirely. Like if I recall correctly, and I don't think they did it this year, but typically the 4400 has to go up back door, and if you had a UTV have to go up back door, I mean you're essentially, you're getting out, putting your front wheels on it. Somebody's going to you're just dragging it over.
Yep, and you're just going to winch it up, which what the majority of the 4400 class competitors choose to do now because it's turned into such a long race. I think the main 4400 race this year was around 220, 230 miles. I can't remember exactly,
That's a long time,
but
man.
it's hike. That's a lot of time to be in the cars, and those leaders, I mean, they're flat moving. If you look at the gap that Horschel and Healy and a couple of the other main guys had this year before they started having issues, it was insane
Yeah.
the speed that they were able to carry through the first 2 laps of that race.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I was actually just checking the Oklahoma timesheets, and it's so funny. Every time in qualifying, a side by side will take the fastest qualifying time for the day. In this Oklahoma race, the 4400 had to go through a little rock garden. The UTVs
Yep.
did not, and I think Jamie McCoy ended up taking the fastest time for qualifying. But I just went and looked at the fastest lap time, 4900 versus 4400. Now, it was on Loop A, which is the more short course style open
Yep.
track. 4400 still had to go through the rock garden. UTV did not, and the 4400 class had an average of 21 minutes lap time and fastest lap time, and the UTV had a just under 24-minute fastest. So there is no replacement for that power.
No, the power in the 40-inch tires. When you can hit 5-gallon buckets in your car and not have to think twice about it, it's a big, big game changer versus a side by side where you're ripping the whole side of your car off at that point.
Yeah, that's a fact, man. It's I don't know. I don't know. I felt really. I want to say I don't know how I feel. I haven't settled on the thought of Polaris kind of leapfrogging the UTV, the 4900 class. Because essentially what they're doing is they're saying, the Razor Pro is our best. This is our best bet. This is our best option that we're going to offer. But we're going to have this new version, and it's just going to leapfrog. It's so good. It's not even able to make a stand here. I'm like you should
I
have
think
built.
it'll find its place really quick.
Yeah.
Because it'll be a great trail car.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the complaints people have about riding a side by side is you're constantly beating the belly of the car up, going
Mhm.
through rock sections. Just a low ride height that Razors have. That's one of the downfalls to them. Where that car is going to have 35, is going to have a lot wider wheelbase, going to be a lot taller. I think you'll find it turned out to be a great trail car too.
Yeah. Now, I mean that you have the conversation of bigger tires on these things. This very week, last week, Moto Race Tire releases a 39-inch tall UTV tire. When does it stop? Does it stop?
It stops at the parts. I think they're going to keep building tires for that for the guys that like the mud and the guys that like to do rock
Yeah,
crawling. But as
I'm
far
pretty
as a
sure.
race application goes, I don't. You're still limited to a side by side diff. You're still limited to a side by side transmission when you're stuck building the car. and there becomes a point when durability overtakes tire size. Uh, I think you saw a lot of guys this year running 35s at King of the Hammers. I think you're going to see more guys next year running 35s at King of the Hammers. I think once you get past the 35-inch tire size, you're kind of stuck with transmission ratios and stuff like that, where you can't get your final drive down low enough like you can in a big
Yeah.
car. You can't just switch over your front diff ratio and your rear ratio and kind of change it to lower your gear ratio to run the bigger tires and still have the low end and still be able to run top end. It's I think the 35 is about the fine line as far as a race application goes, as far as tire size.
Now let me ask you this. So let me make a little note here so I don't forget about the Talon. Well, let me ask you that. Have you seen the Talon in person, the Talon R that has the no CVT set up into a transfer case?
Yes, I have the Honda Talons.
Yeah. How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
I like it. I think it's cool. I mean, I'm not a fan of belts.
Mhm.
I finally got my belts figured out with that new Pro XP setup and my transmission and stuff, and had any belt failures all I want to say since I've switched over to it all season.
Mhm.
Belts are always going to be the downfall of a side by side. That's always going to be your limit when you're really pushing it, is worrying about belt heat and burning up a belt or having it explode. If you can eliminate that, that's just one failure point that you no longer have to worry about. And then plus being able to select the transmission, select the gear you're in, all that stuff, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that was where I was going with this, was in the elusive Pro R things that we've seen, schematics and things like that have been posted out there. It shows going into a transfer case. Now, one thing that you mentioned that I haven't really put much thought into is in solid axles, you can re-gear, down in the axle to get some of that power back, that low end. Could you take advantage of the gearing in the setup in the transfer case and essentially use that transfer case to get some of that low end power back? And that's when you would start seeing UTV guys, racing on a 37, a 38-inch tall tire.
Yeah, I think if you have, I think it'll be the future. I think you're going to have some aftermarket companies get involved and have to make
Mhm.
different gear ratios and stuff for the transfer case to be able to change the transfer case gears like you would in Atlas.
Mhm.
Or you may see them make new gear ratios for the diff depending on how they come, what diff they have, how it's all put together. And be able
Nobody's
to
doing
really
that right
dial
now,
the
right?
cars in. No, nobody's doing that right now.
Why not?
I know you can do an overall drop in the transmission.
Mhm.
You can do like a 12%. I used to run that setup in my car, just like a 16 turbo transmission has I want
Yep.
to say it's a 12% overall high and low drop compared to the regular 17, 18 turbo transmissions.
Mhm.
I ran that setup for a little while. It was super awesome out of the hole, but you're speed limited to around 65, 70 miles an hour on the top end with the reduction. It was great for rock crawling. I loved it at the hammers as far as in the rocks with the lower reduction in low range with the big 32-inch BFG tires.
Mhm.
It really made rock crawling awesome and a lot less stress on the belt. It'd be super cool. Saw the aftermarket get involved and start making different ratios and stuff where you could run a lot bigger tires and take a lot of the stress off the belt and clutching.
Why has nobody done that yet? Yeah.
I don't know. No idea. I guess there's a lot of money that goes into doing a ring and pinion. There's a lot of machines and stuff that you need to be able to make custom ring and pinions and change the ratio and get everything to work right. I'm sure it'll come eventually. Just like everything, it always keeps progressing.
Mhm.
The sport's changing every day.
Yeah, it is. And I hadn't, to be honest with you, uh I had TJ Krob on from Dynajet, and we went through the explanation of CVTs, the whole clutch system, how it works, what happens
Yep.
when you're changing weights and things like that. And I had never thought about putting a different ring and pinion in there. And I know it'd be a little more complicated in the rear because of the way the transmission and the rear diff are set up. But in those elusive Pro R pictures that we've seen, the rear diff becomes isolated just like the front, and it would be
Yep.
you would think that there's a lot of there's potential for aftermarket support there that would be
Oh,
really,
100%.
I
Really
think it,
cutting edge stuff. I think he's come out with and really do some cool stuff with the transfer case and the Pro R, like it's speculated.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I hope that it comes to fruition, and we'll see what happens. We'll just
Yeah, I really hope it's everything that we've seen pictures of and stuff we've heard about. If it really comes out, it's going to be a game changer. I think it's
yeah.
going to be it's going to be on its own level.
Yeah, I will see. To me, Speed UTV Pro R, they're two different cats fighting, potentially in the same arena. I know that the CC limit on the Speed UTV is still in regulation, but
Yep.
that would, if it's got that much power, it seems like you'd have to have something way over that to to be able to fight with it. But back to rock bouncing. Have you kept up with the season at all? I know you were at Blue
Yep.
Holler. I got a chance to say hey. What do you think of the season, and what do you think of the incorporation of short coursing?
I
All that
love it.
stuff.
I love it. I think they really killed it in finals this year as far as Southern Rock Racing Series with the course selection, the way they laid everything out. It gives the drivers a lot more seat time. That was one of the things I really didn't like about rock bouncing when we did it. Is you drive 4 or 5 hours, you're in the car 20 seconds, 25 seconds, and
Yeah,
you're done back in the car, back in your truck 4 or 5 hours to drive home. With the short coursing, they've added in you really got to drive your car. Your car's still got to be set up to climb hills. Your car's still got to be able to jump the big ledges, but you're not just holding it on the floor and able to use your 1600 horsepower and just hold it in a straight line and hope you land in the right spot.
yeah,
You've really got to think and actually put your mind behind your driving versus just looking up the hill and shifting her in a drive and wouldn't it. The rigs this year, it's insane. The progression is great. I love seeing everybody be competitive, pushing Timmy to be his best and really make him stay on top of his game.
hmm
His his IFS car this year was awesome. I really dug it. He straight up killed it as far as the overall season, coming out with a brand new car and being really competitive and kind of showing everybody that IFS can compete in the rock bouncing world and be competitive on the East Coast. Um, I still think Assault Axe can be just as competitive. I think you put him in the same car he ran the year before he built the IFS, and he's going to do the same thing he did in the IFS car.
yeah,
He's just that good. He's that dedicated. He puts that much time into perfecting his craft that he's going to show up and he's going to be the guy to beat no matter where they're at, no matter what race they're at. He's going to come in, he's going to put his best down, he's going to spend the time to make sure that he wins. He hates to lose, and I love that about him. He's a great guy. I mean, he's
yeah.
super humble, probably one of the best advocators of the sport you could have. He's pretty funny too when you get him to the side and actually can get him to start talking.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Obviously, you mentioned the fact that he has an IFS car. I've heard talk of portals being added to machines in this next year. I don't think that there's large scale portals that can handle rock bouncing, but I've heard portals. I've heard a whole number of different things. What do you think these, have you heard? Let me start there. Have you heard any rumors about what people are building this year?
I haven't. I heard Tim's building a new car. I heard
Yep.
his car got sold. He's building a new one. I'd love to see him take the Weld 74 portals and build an IFS car out of it to where he could get the bulkhead a lot higher.
Yep.
Still run a very similar setup to what he ran last season. I think it'd be cool if you could incorporate those Weld 74 portals like you see on Pellegrino's car,
Yep.
to get the bulkhead off the ground a little bit more and give it a little more clearance going through the rocks. Um, I don't know. I know a lot of people really got their eyes opened up when Tim showed up with that IFS car this year and had the success he did. I'm curious to see what little Tim Bacon's building. I know he's been building a new car.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to see a few more come out that you aren't hearing about that are hidden. A lot of guys like to be secretive. A lot of guys don't want to give away what they're doing for next season.
Yeah.
I'm I'm the exact opposite. I'll tell you everything I'm doing. You still got to beat me. And that's the way I feel about it. I can tell you
Yeah.
everything I got. I can tell you everything that I'm doing. You still got to outdrive me on that day.
Yeah, yeah, and I think from a social media perspective too, I think that having build updates and like letting people like kind of lifting the curtain, I think that builds your audience way better than
Oh,
just
100%. The way
you know,
Tim does his reveals and kind of keeps everything hidden until the very last minute when it's
yeah,
fully powder coated, fully done, and he'll post a little snippet here and there and kind of let you, here's a bracket, here's a cab. I mean, it's
yeah.
pretty cool the way he keeps everybody in suspense and kind of draws you in for the big reveal and like, what is he doing? What has he been up to this whole winter, hiding for the next 3 months?
Yeah, my favorite is the picture that we're gonna get like in a month from now, and it's just a motor and like two brace like chassis bars. It's like about time to get started. And it's just like, man, in 4 months, this is going to be, this is going to be the podium machine.
Yeah, and who knows? Knowing Tim, he's probably already got it built and just posting those pictures when it's already done.
You're exactly right, because that man puts a lot of seat time in, a lot of testing. So I have a question for you though. If you were going to build a rock bouncer today, and you're going to go with we'll call it a production rock bouncer, who would you have build your machine?
Timmy.
Okay, I like
If I
it.
was gonna, if I was gonna have an East Coast rock bouncing guy build my car, it'd definitely be Timmy. If I was gonna have a big production shop build my car, man, I'd be tempted to run a Miller chassis rock bouncing.
Woo! Yeah, buddy. I
I
like
think
it.
you could take Miller's car and shed all the Ultra 4 weight off of it, and I think you could especially with the way the courses are now.
Yeah.
I think you could come out with a Miller car and really throw down against all the rock bouncers if you didn't care about wrecking the car for the next 4,400 race you had.
Yeah.
Those cars flat work, and especially with the way the courses are now, you got to drive. You can't just show up and hold it on the floor.
Yeah, I told Bree this in our last interview, and I still think it's hilarious. But big, I forget, is it Bubba Bacon who has the red trail like bouncer? Just
Big Tim.
Big Tim, Big Tim. Okay, Big Tim.
Yep.
Sorry, there's so many Bacons that like you get them all mixed in, and it's just at one point it's like I just know them by blue rig, red rig, and white. So it's just that's how I know.
Yeah, Big Tim. You better call that a buggy. You better not call it a race car. He doesn't like it when you call it a race car.
Let me explain something to you. When I saw that thing on the starting line, I just thought to myself, it is so awesome that we have machines like Timmy, we have machines like Anthony Yant's car, and then we have that machine here, which is like legacy. This is, that's a Hall of Fame machine, and it just climbs out the top on most of the hills. I mean,
Yep.
I don't know about Hill 2 by any means, but
Same thing with Screaming Blue. It's
yeah.
super old technology. You know what I mean? Bobby Tanner's car, it's years and years old, and Adam Ringer kept Showgirl coming out for years and years. There's some old bouncers. I mean, they've been around for several years, and they're still competitive. I know Bobby just won that event at Dirty Turtle this weekend in Screaming Blue.
Yep.
Boo Bash, he ended up winning that with this buggy that's 8 years, 7, 8 years old. I don't know exactly on the age of it, but I know it's an antique in the world of race cars, especially with people building new stuff every year, and he's still kind of running the same stuff he's ran from the beginning. It's super cool to see that you can still bring something out with outdated technology and be competitive depending on the type of course you're racing at that weekend.
I agree. So small note, I didn't realize that he had only won one race before that. Every other time he had, I mean, anytime he had podium, he wasn't first, or finishing the race is a feat for Bobby, because Bobby's driving style. But also this past weekend, we saw the Plowboy 3. I think it's out there.
Yep.
Bobby was saying that he owns that machine now.
Yep.
If I heard
And Ethan's driving it. Bobby's son. Super cool to see Ethan back out. I'd love to see Jordan and Shelby come back out too. They always threw down. I remember watching videos of them.
Oh yeah, that's
all the time. That
that's
whole
the
family
OG crew. That's it, man.
Yep.
Those are the people.
That whole family likes to throw down. I mean, they are not scared to come out and yard sale their stuff and smile about it as they walk back to the trailer.
Yeah, that's a special group of people there, and I think that family, there's a handful of people, but that family in particular that's so influential in rock bouncing. And I wonder, I've tried to get Bobby on the show since we started, and I was going to talk to him. We were at Blue Holler, but it was one of those where it just didn't seem to line up right. But I'm trying to get him in person or something, because I want to know his thoughts on, I know he's out there just having a good time, but like where it began and where it is now, where we have, reject fab machines that are super high performance, the Lamborghinis of the rock bouncing world, where it's just so performance based and it's, result driven. I want to know what he thinks about all this, because he was just such a, an igniting factor in all of that.
Yeah, and it's so awesome that we've got such great ambassadors in the sport. I mean, the Tanner family is awesome. You look at any of them. I mean, Danny Smith's great, Timmy's great, Brandon Davis is great. I mean, you can't pretty much everybody in the entire sport is awesome. I mean, it's such a great group. We all have such a great time coming together, and everybody will help everybody make sure you're at your best when you're on the race hill. And you don't see that in a lot of other sports. You pretty much see that across the whole off-road community in general, whether you're talking about trail riding, side-by-side riding, rock crawling, ultra four, rock bouncing. Pretty much any event you show up to, anytime you're out, everybody will help everybody, and we're all just a big family, and it makes the sport so great that everybody shows up and everybody supports everybody doing what we love to do.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much it. We talked about where you're going to be in the future. You're going to be getting this new car prep for King of Hammers. Is there anywhere else that you're going to be? Where people could come say hey, or just come
Yeah,
see?
I'll be at Windrock next weekend for the Pro Rock race. There's a good chance I may show up and run a rental in the survival race.
Hey, whose rental are you going to grab?
I've been talking to John LaCroix. I might jump in his RS1 and run it. First time I've ever raced an RS1, so it'll be interesting. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Either way, I'll be there filming for Mad Ram 11 for all the rock bouncing stuff that's going on. Depending on if I can get the new car built in time, I'd love to go do the Texplex 12-hour in the middle of December. That looks like that's going to be a super awesome event.
Is
I
that
know
is that
that's
a legit 12 hours of
it's a
racing?
legit 12 hours of racing. It's a multi-man team, straight 12 hours of nonstop endurance racing. It's going to be a epic event for sure.
Is it
I know
is
they're
it
doing like a 6-hour class. I think they're having a 3-hour class and then a full pro 12-hour class.
Now it's essentially how many laps you get done in a time frame, right?
Yep, it's how
Okay.
many laps in the 12 hours. But I mean, when you've got a couple people, I mean, I know a bunch of the big guys are coming. Miller and all those guys plan on racing down there.
Dang,
Hunter Cody, all those guys. It's going to be competitive.
it'd be
It might
crazy.
come down to minutes. It might come down to laps. It's really hard to tell how it's going to shake out at the end of 12 hours of brutal endurance racing with lap traffic. You got darkness to deal with, broken parts, trying to keep the car together, driver change, fuel change.
Mhm.
I mean, there's so much that goes on in a 12-hour race that there's no telling what's going to happen.
Are they going to have 3 drivers or 4?
I think you can have up to 4 drivers per car. I want to say 3 or 4. I can't remember exactly what they ended up coming out with on the rules.
That's a long time to be in the car too. I mean, to do a short course for 3 hours, that's a long time.
Yeah, especially when you get 12 hours of. I know they added an endurance loop in, a big endurance loop. They're going to open up. I guess they've got some
Okay.
racing going on in this next month or two where they're going to run their endurance course and kind of let people get a preview of what they're going to be for the 12-hour race. But you figure at Hammers, we're in the car 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be like racing at the Hammers. But you can have multiple drivers. I think you're going to see the pace be extremely high
Yep.
for that 12 hours, being able to swap out fresh drivers every couple hours and keeping a fresh person behind the wheel.
Yeah. I'm curious if they have any rules on substitution of drivers and things like that. Like you have to, you can't get out of the car twice. You can't get out and get back in. I wonder how they're going to work that. So I think that it's really cool. I think that it opens, this is the first of its kind, and I'm really excited to see this happen again. I'm excited to see it adopted other places. I'm still waiting for a Texplex in Tennessee or Kentucky or somewhere close where we can come out and do this kind of thing, because it's just far enough where you got to commit to getting there.
Yeah, it's about a 12-hour drive for me out of Kentucky. Same thing with Mid America. It's about a 10-hour drive for me out of here.
Yeah.
I wish they were both of them were close. They've got a really cool series going on next year with those giant payouts they've got going on.
Hmm. Well, that's pretty much all I had for you. Anything that we didn't cover while you're in here?
No, man, I think we pretty much hit it all. It was
Cool.
awesome talking to you again.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Facebook at James Cantrell. You can find my racer page. Give me a follow. I try to keep it updated with everything we're doing. Instagram is jcantrell502. Follow me on there. I try to keep it updated just like I do my Facebook stuff. And then we'll post some stuff here and there on Mad Ram 11, especially from the Hammers. We'll try to keep it updated and everything we're doing next year.
All right. Well, sweet brother. We'll close it out here. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks, sir. Have a good evening.